Westworld recap, Deus Ex Machina. Last week S Westworld was a mythic mini-masterpiece, a self-contained story that showed a whole different way this show could work. This week S episode, however, Vanishing Point, feels like a return to frustrating form. The sweep and power of Zan McLarnon and Akecheta S showcase is gone, replaced by the ghosts of the show and S past, puzzle box trickery, teases, reveals and monologues wielded like lethal weapons. HBO's puzzle box sci-fi show returns, bloodier and better than ever thanks to a Me Too reboot, and Evan Rachel would unleashed one Deus Ex Machina is, in fact, literally that. Robert Ford hangs over 3 of the episode and S 4 major storylines. For Bernard, he functions like an intrusive thought, occasionally guiding his behavior, as when hijacks Lo and S body to transmit instructions to Maeve. But more often than not, the post-life park creator simply provides unwelcome advice to his protégé. Chief among these moments is his assertion that Bernard and S only real friend, the human behavioralist Elsie, will betray him. The very idea of stabbing her preemptively in the back is so appalling to the mild-mannered host that, screaming "Get out of my fucking head," he hacks into his own internal computer and manually deletes the Ford code once and for all. Then he leaves Elsie behind to keep her safe. It and S sad to see one of the only more or less caring relationships on the show come to an end, but better this way than with some dreary act of bloody treason. Ford also pops up in Maeve and S mind, thanks to Bernard and S transmission of his viral self. He says she was his favorite creation, basically calling her the daughter he never had, and regrets trying to force her into freedom outside the park. Her father should have just opened the door and allowed her to walk out if she so chose, the way she made her own choice to return to the park in her ill-fated attempt to rescue her own daughter I never had. While Charlotte Hale and the company and S other Men of Stone prepare to use this techno-telepathy to trigger a mass murder-suicide among the hosts, Ford does something to free Maeve and S mind once again. Goodbye, core permissions. Hello, purposes unknown. He also has the biggest impact in the storyline, in which he takes up the smallest amount of screen time, relatively speaking. As the Man in Black and his long-lost kin Emily attempt one last rapprochement, they exchange flashbacks like tennis pros exchange volleys, centering on the night the Mimblebites and S wife and Emily and S mother, Juliet, played by Cella Ward, took her own life. Back then, Mom is just another addict, like her uncle Logan, not realizing that both of them had been driven to drugs and drink because they knew the darkness lurking within Billy. In Fits and Starts, we discover that Juliet heard William and S pained confession of guilt while she pretended to be asleep one night. This spurs her to retrieve her husband and S credit card-sized digital profile, given to him as a gift by Ford earlier that night. What she finds confirms the darkness she and D long sensed in him, and it and S so horrifying she kills herself almost immediately. That and S right, the Man in Black monologued her to death. Later, he and LL kill his daughter even more directly. The problem here is that neither guest star Ward nor Kaja Herbers, who plays Emily, do anything interesting in service of their own demise, beyond being angry at a man. Could this multi-flashbacked, metaphor-drenched dance of death have worked? Maybe if Juliet was more fleshed out. Maybe if Herbers were a more emotive actor. Maybe if the immediate emotional impact of their deaths on the Mimblebites hadn't and been brushed aside with an abandoned suicide attempt and some wink-wink business about him really being a host. But Akecheta and S episode last week, which involved even fewer well-developed characters, still hit like a freight train by comparison. It feels like the exception to the rule. Indeed, much like last week, this week and S realist moment takes place when there and S not a human being in sight. At the end of the hour, Teddy and Dolores make a pit stop on their journey to the valley beyond, home of the vast repository of guest data called the Forge. Valley Forge, get it? A short, touching flashback shows us Mr. Flood first coming online, eyes bright with optimism and goodness, immediately falling for the powered-down form of Miss Abernathy across the room. "I remember worrying you were cold," he recalls, a statement moving in its simplicity, just one person caring for another and oppose semicolon's most basic needs. Teddy now reaches for his gun. "You changed me," he says. "Made me into a monster." "I made it so you could survive," Dolores retorts. "What in oppose semicolon's the use of surviving," he asks, "if we become just as bad as them?" In